Hey everyone, welcome to our Enlightened Despots screencast. The definition of an enlightened despot is an absolute ruler who uses his or her royal power to make social or political changes within their own country. And there are a few rulers that we're going to talk about during the 1700s that actually worked to do this. The one that we have already heard about is Catherine the Great. We kind of know how good she was at foreign policy. Domestically, she really didn't do as much, but she still was known as an enlightened despot. I mean, we talked about already how she loved Enlightenment ideas and how she exchanged letters with Voltaire and how she funded Diderot's encyclopedia, how she sent people to Enlightenment salons to find out what people were talking about at these functions. So she really loved Enlightenment ideas. It's just implementing them was very hard for her. And one of the reasons it was so hard was because of that tie that she had to the nobility. All those people who put her in power now kind of have her hands, I guess, a little tied behind her back. So in terms of Enlightenment ideas, she spoke out against serfdom, but we know that she kind of had to still enforce it because of her nobles. She did make, she codified laws, and she did make new laws. I mean, we read in that primary source, some of you, about how she suggested reforming the law and taxation with peasants. So she had many, many ideas. They were just not very well enforced because the nobility really had kind of a stranglehold on her. She did grant the nobles a charter of rights, so she kind of reestablished or reaffirmed their rights as nobility. She did successfully expand her empire, and really what she's known for as an enlightened despot is the fact that she spoke out against things, and she loved Enlightenment ideas, and she exchanged so many letters with so many philosophers because she wanted other people in other countries to think that she was enlightened. And I think she's kind of, successfully, kind of pulled the curtain over a lot of people's eyes over the fact that she really maintained a lot of control herself, and because of that strong, I guess, relationship with the nobility, she could not break away from them, that she really was not as successful as she would have liked to have been with her Enlightenment ideas. But she is considered an enlightened despot because of her funding of Enlightenment works, because of her communication with philosophers, and then the small things that she did within her own country. If you think about the public education for boys and girls, her codifying the laws, her speaking out against serfdom even though she kept it, those are kind of the things that stand out for her, and the changes that she made within her own country, and inviting different culture back into her own country. She loved the French culture, so she brought that back, and she encouraged cultural, I guess, expansion in a sense. People learning different languages, the schools that were open. She opened up theaters and loved drama. So in the terms of arts and culture, she kind of expanded Russia and enlightened them in that way. But not so much in terms of, abolishing serfdom like we're going to see Joseph II do in a minute. She wasn't as successful, okay? But she is still considered an enlightened despot, and she did do a number of things to kind of gain that title. The next enlightened despot that was ruling during the same time period was Frederick the Great of Prussia. And we know Catherine was from Russia. Frederick the Great is from Prussia, which is right next door. And the next guy we're going to talk about, the next king, is Joseph II from Austria. We already know that three of them have a certain relationship when it comes to Poland, so keep that in mind as well. So Frederick, he considered himself the first servant of the state, even though he didn't really give up that much power. He thought that his duty, or his main purpose in life, was to work for the common good. So he actually he did a few things for peasants. He gave them jobs to drain swamps, and you could say he encouraged, but he actually kind of forced peasants to grow new crops in the fields, in the swamps that they drained. He provided tools for them. He provided seeds for them so they could grow their own food. I mean, after there were many wars that they partook in, so these veterans of these wars, they were provided with seeds and tools to kind of fend for themselves. I'm sorry, Mrs. Tennyson Finn just busted in the middle of my screencast. Okay, sorry, she didn't even want anything. She just wanted to say hi. So anyway, we can yell at her Friday for interrupting our screencast. Anyway, so Frederick, he was able to kind of to improve the lives of peasants by providing jobs and providing tools and providing seeds. The veterans who fought in the Prussian Wars, he provided for them. He was very religiously tolerant, so any kind of religion that you were, you could come to Prussia and you could practice your own religion. He was famous for saying that in his kingdom, everyone could go to heaven in their own kind of fashion, meaning any kind of religion, whatever it was, you could go to your own heaven, and he would not have a problem with that. He made the government much more efficient, which in essence, if he made the government more efficient in terms of he's the one that set up all the members of his bureaucracy, but by doing that, he kind of solidified his own control because he put in positions, or he put people in positions that he wanted there, okay, so people that were close to him. So he could assert control over them. So they're still remaining absolutists, even though they do promote some Enlightenment ideas or adopt some Enlightenment ideas. He reorganized the civil service, so the civil service are jobs like nowadays it would be like a mailman or a police officer, people like those. And he remade the test for those positions. He simplified laws like Catherine did so that they were easier to understand. So he did adopt some positive things and some Enlightenment ideas within his own country. His goal was to serve his country, and he did that in a number of ways with the peasants and even with the nobles, granting them positions within the government and his reorganized bureaucracy. But his main goal, the one thing he did not want to do, was he did not want to give up his royal power. And he exchanged letters with Voltaire, and people say that he encouraged Voltaire to come to his country and attend and teach at his academy, but really in essence, the rumor is that he just had a major crush on Voltaire and was absolutely adored him. And he didn't necessarily invite Voltaire as much as kidnapped Voltaire to go to his school of science in Prussia. So it's kind of like there's a little area of discussion there on Frederick's motives for bringing Voltaire to his country and the ways in which he went about it. But overall, he is considered an enlightened despot because of those new ideas that he brought and the reforms that he made. But his main goal, as with all enlightened absolute monarchs, is the fact that they did not necessarily want to give up all of their royal control. Our next and last enlightened despot that we are going to talk about is this guy, Joseph II. He is from Austria, and for about the first 10 years, he actually reigned with his mother, Maria Theresa, and she was also considered an enlightened despot. She did many things for her country, and the fact that she was a strong female queen, we haven't really heard of that many, along with Catherine and Elizabeth. She really adopted some good policies, and Joseph II is her son who carried on those policies. He was known as a peasant emperor, and he was known as this because he would dress up in regular, it kind of reminds you of Peter, he would dress up in regular clothes, but instead of leaving his country, he would go out among his people, and he would listen to the people talk about their problems and ask them about their problems so he could get a better understanding of what was going on within his country. So he is known as a peasant emperor because he would go out and he would travel around under a fake name and in disguise to kind of see what problems were apparent among the people. He, instead of using nobles for official positions, he would choose people from the middle class. So it wasn't necessarily your heritage or your birthright, it was your talent. So he hired people based on their talent, not on their families, okay? And he would put these people into, head departments within the government. He changed, he made political reforms and he made legal reforms within his country. He granted tolerations to Protestants and Jews. it was known as a Catholic empire, Austria. So he did have religious toleration for those two groups. He put the Catholic Church under his control, which sounds very absolutist, but what he did in return is that he turned those churches and those monasteries and those convents or nunneries, he turned them into hospitals for the people, and he effectively abolished serfdom. He's the only enlightened despot out of the three that abolished serfdom for his people. Unfortunately, many of these reforms changed after he died because the nobility rushed in and kind of squashed the whole idea of these reforms, kind of like what happened to Peter the Great's changes. The nobility didn't follow them anymore, and there was kind of an uproar after his death about, the old ways as opposed to the new ways. But he definitely did a lot of good things for the country, and I would say that he was the most enlightened despot out of the three of them. He made the most changes, and he worked mostly for the people. Okay, other than Frederick and Catherine, who were so concerned about maintaining their absolutist power that they didn't make as many reforms as they could have. They weren't fully enlightened, I would say, or not as enlightened as Joseph. Okay, so those are our three enlightened despots. We're going to play a little game possibly on Friday, tomorrow, to kind of review. And then we are going to start talking about our exam for next week. Okay? So I will see you guys all tomorrow, and I hope you have a good night.